The salt-kissed wind carried more than ocean spray that evening. It carried secrets that would unravel everything David thought he knew about his life as he stood on the weathered deck of the coastal cottage, watching his 8-year-old son Marcus build sandcastles in the fading light. He never imagined that within hours a woman from his past would emerge from the mist like a ghost returning to claim what was rightfully hers. That some truths David would learn have a way of surfacing when the tide is just right. The cottage had been David's sanctuary for 3 years. Now, ever since the divorce papers were signed and his world had crumbled. Like those very sandcastles Marcus loved to build every other weekend, he and his son would escape to this remote stretch of Oregon coast where the crushing waves seemed to wash away the awkwardness that still lingered between them. "Dad, look." Marcus called out, his sandy hair catching the last golden rays of sunlight. "I made it extra tall." This time David smiled, setting down his coffee mug on the deck, railing its magnificent body. A real fortress, as he watched his son work with the focused intensity that reminded him so much of himself at that age. David felt that familiar pang of regret. If only he could give Marcus the stable home he deserved. If only the custody arrangement wasn't so complicated. If only Sarah hadn't. The sound of car tires on gravel interrupted his brooding thoughts. David frowned, glancing toward the winding road that led to their secluded retreat. No one knew they were here. That was the whole point. Through the gathering dusk, he watched the silver sedan pull into the small clearing beside his own car, the engine cut. And for a moment everything was still except for the eternal rhythm of the waves. Then the car door opened and a figure stepped out, a woman with long dark hair that the ocean breeze immediately claimed, sending it dancing around her shoulders, even from a distance, even after 12 years. David's heart recognized her before his mind could catch up. Elena. She moved with that same graceful confidence he remembered, though something in her posture suggested uncertainty. As she walked toward the cottage, her eyes found his across the sand and wooden deck, and time seemed to fold in on itself. Suddenly David was 25 again, standing in a similar beach house in California, watching the same woman pack her bags and walk out of his life forever. Daddy Marcus had stopped building and was looking between his father and the approaching stranger with curiosity. "Who's that lady?" The question hung in the air, like the salty mist. David realized he didn't have a simple answer. How do you explain to your child that the woman walking toward them might be the reason their entire family story was built on shifting sand? Elena reached the bottom of the deck stairs and paused, her green eyes, those unforgettable green eyes that had haunted David's dreams for over a decade, meeting his with a mixture of determination and vulnerability. "Hello, David." Her voice was exactly as he remembered it, warm honey, with just a hint of the Spanish accent she'd inherited from her grandmother Elena. His own voice came out rougher than intended. "What are you doing here?" She glanced at Marcus, who had abandoned his sandcastle entirely and was now watching their exchange with the unabashed curiosity of childhood. "I need to talk to you, it's important." Dad Marcus tugged at David's sleeve. "Can I keep building? The tide's coming in." "Of course, buddy, stay where I can see you." "Okay." As Marcus returned to his construction project, David descended the stairs, each step taking him closer to a conversation he'd both longed for and dreaded. For 12 years, Elena had aged beautifully. The laugh lines around her eyes spoke of joy, while the subtle strength in her stance suggested she'd weathered her share of storms. "You look good," she said softly, as he approached. "Older, but good you look." He stopped, swallowed hard. "You look exactly like I remembered." They stood there for a moment, two people who had once shared everything, now separated by years of silence and the weight of unspoken words. The sound of Marcus's chatter as he worked on his castle provided a gentle soundtrack to their reunion. "How did you find me?" David's finally asked. Elena's fingers worried the strap of her purse. "Your mother. I called her this morning. I told her it was urgent. My mother gave you our location." David couldn't hide his surprise. His mother had never been Elena's biggest fan, especially after the way things had ended. "I may have mentioned it," concerned Marcus, the name of his son spoken by Elena sent a chill down David's spine that had nothing to do with the ocean breeze. What about Marcus? Elena looked past him to where the boy was now digging a moat around his elaborate castle. David, we need to sit down for this conversation. Something in her tone made his stomach drop. Elena, what's going on? Why are you here after all these years? She turned back to him, and in her eyes, he saw the same fear had witnessed the night she left. But underneath it, there was also a fierce maternal protectiveness had never seen before, because 12 years ago I made a choice. I thought it was the right choice, the only choice. But now she paused, watching Marcus chase a retreating wave. Now, I'm not sure I can live with that choice anymore. David's mind reeled as Elena's words settled into the spaces between his certainties. He looked at Marcus, who was now adding seaweed decorations to his castle walls, humming a tune David recognized from one of his favorite movies. Sarah told me Marcus was born 6 months premature. David said slowly, that's why he was so small, why he had to stay in the NICU for weeks. David, Elena's voice was gentle but firm. Marcus wasn't premature. He was born exactly 9 months after you and I. After our last night together, the last night. David remembered it with painful clarity. Their final attempt to salvage a relationship that had been strained by his job demands and her growing desire for independence. They had made love with the desperate passion of two people trying to hold on to something that was already slipping away. The next morning, Elena had been gone, leaving only a note about needing space and time to figure out her life. But if you were pregnant, why didn't you tell me? Elena wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I was scared. We were so young, David. You were just starting your career, working those crazy hours at the firm. I was trying to finish my master's degree. We could barely manage our own relationship. How could we handle a baby? So you just disappeared. I went to stay with my aunt in Portland. I was going to tell you, I swear I was. But then Sarah called me. David felt ice forming in his veins. Sarah called you. She knew about us, about the pregnancy. I don't know how. Maybe your mother mentioned something, or maybe she just put the pieces together. But she called me when I was about 6 months along. What did she say? Elena's voice grew stronger, as if telling the story was giving her strength. She told me you had moved on, that you were happy with her, that you were planning to propose, she said. You'd never wanted children, that I would be ruining your life by coming back. Elena, David's heart was breaking for the young woman. She had been alone and pregnant, and convinced she was doing the right thing. She offered to adopt the baby, said she would make sure he had a good home, that you would never have to know. She even offered to pay for my medical expenses. The pieces of the puzzle were coming together now, creating a picture that made David feel sick. And you agreed. I was 23. And terrified. My aunt was struggling financially. I had no insurance, no job. Sarah seemed so confident, so together. She promised Marcus would have the best of everything. David watched his son, their son, carefully arranging shells around his castle. How many of Marcus's features had he attributed to Sarah's family, when they actually came from Elena? The dark hair he'd assumed came from Sarah's Italian grandfather. The green eyes he'd thought were just a beautiful oddity, the way Marcus sometimes tilted his head when he was concentrating, exactly the way Elena used to do. Why now? David asked. Why are you telling me this now? Elena stood up and walked to the deck, railing, her hands gripping the weathered wood. Because last month my aunt died. She was the only family I had left, the only one who knew the truth. And at her funeral, I realized I'd spent 11 years telling myself I'd given Marcus to his father, that he was where he belonged. But he wasn't with his father, was he? He was with your wife. Ex-wife, David corrected automatically. Ex-wife, who has been lying to you for over a decade. The full weight of Elena's revelation settled over David like fog rolling in from the ocean. Every birthday party, every Christmas morning, every parent-teacher conference, all of it had been built on a foundation of lies. Sarah had not only deceived him about Marcus's parentage, She had deceived Marcus too, does he know? David asked, his voice. Does Marcus know Sarah isn't his biological mother? Elena shook her head. I don't think so as far as he's concerned. She's the only mother he's ever known. David thought about all the times Marcus had mentioned feeling different from his classmates, how he'd always seemed more interested in art and music than sports, how his teachers consistently commented on his gentle, sensitive nature. Sarah had always dismissed these observations, insisting Marcus just needed to be pushed harder to toughen up. There's something else. Elena continued, still facing me. Ocean, Sarah contacted me 2 months ago. David's head snapped up. What she wanted to meet. Said she had a proposition for me. What kind of proposition? Elena's expression troubled. She and her boyfriend are getting married. They want to move to Denver. For his job, she asked if I wanted to take Marcus. The words hit David like a physical blow. What she said, the custody arrangement with you was too complicated, that it would be easier for everyone if I just took him back like he was something. She was returning to a store. David shot to his feet, anger coursing through him. She can't do that. She can't just decide to give away my son. Our son. Elena said quietly and legally. She probably can. I never signed away my parental rights. David, the adoption was never finalized through the courts. Sarah has been claiming to be Marcus's biological mother on all his official documents, but there's no legal record of me giving up custody. The implications of this were staggering. David began pacing the small deck, his mind racing through the legal ramifications, the emotional consequences for Marcus, the years of deception that were suddenly unraveling. This is insane, he muttered. She's been planning to abandon him after 11 years of being his mother. That's why I had to come to you. I couldn't let her just discard him. But I also couldn't take him without you knowing the truth. David stopped pacing and looked at Elena, really looked at her in her face. He could see the woman had fallen in love with all those years ago, but also something new, a mother's fierce protectiveness. Even for a child she'd given up. What do you want, Elena? What do you want from me, from this situation? She was quiet for a long moment, her eyes moving between David and Marcus. I want what's best for him. I want him to know he's loved. I want him to understand that giving him up was the hardest thing I ever did, but I thought it was right at the time. And now I want to be part of his life. If he'll have me, not as a replacement for Sarah, but as who I am, his biological mother, as if called by their talk. Marcus chose that moment to run up the beach toward them, his castle complete and the tide beginning to threaten its walls. Dad, Elena had clearly decided the strange woman was friendly enough to talk to. Can you come see my castle before the water gets it? David and Elena shared a look the first time they truly connected since she'd arrived in that moment. David saw not the woman who had left him 12 years ago, but a mother looking at her child for the first time in 11 years. Well, be right there, buddy, David called out as Marcus ran back to his creation. David turned to Elena. He doesn't know, no. And I won't tell him unless you think we should. This is your call, David. You've been his father in every way that matters. But you're his mother. Elena's smile was sad. But real biology doesn't make someone a parent. You've earned the right to make this choice. They walked down to the beach together, their feet sinking into the soft sand as they approached Marcus's fancy creation. The boy beamed with pride as he gave them a detailed tour of his castle, explaining the purpose of each tower, the smart placement of the moat, and the moat. Small flag head made from a piece of seaweed. It's incredible, Marcus. Elena said, crouching down to his eye level. You're quite the builder. Marcus grinned. I want to build real buildings someday. Dad says I'm good at imagining things. Your dad is right. Imagination is one of the most important tools a builder can have. Are you a builder? Marcus asked Elena. I'm a garden designer. I help people figure out what kinds of gardens and outdoor spaces would make them happy. That's like building, but with plants. Exactly like that. The tide was creeping closer to the castle, and Marcus suddenly became very serious about making his defenses stronger as he worked. David and Elena stood side by side watching their son battle the unavoidable. It's okay, Marcus announced to no one special, I can build another one tomorrow. The simple wisdom of a child. David felt Elena's hand brush his as they both reached to steady themselves against a strong gust of wind. David, Elena said softly, I need to ask you something. And I need you to be honest. He nodded, not trusting his voice. Do you think you could ever forgive me for leaving, for not telling you about Marcus? For all of it, the question hung between them like the mist coming in from the ocean. David thought about the young man had been 12 years ago, driven working, often putting work before relationships. He thought about the young woman. Elena had been free, artistic, dreaming of a life beyond the normal path everyone expected her to follow. I think, he said carefully, that we were both young and scared, and probably making the best choices we could with what we knew. That's very nice. Elena, he turned to face her fully. You gave birth to my son, and gave him to me to raise, even though I didn't know. You could have ended the pregnancy, you could have kept him, and never told me he existed. You could have put him up for adoption with strangers instead. You made sure he ended up with his father. That's not something I need to forgive, that's something I need to thank you for. Tears spilled down Elena's cheeks, and for a moment, David had to fight the want to pull her into his arms, the way he would have 12 years ago. I miss so much, she whispered, his first steps, his first words, his first day of school, but you don't have to miss the rest. As the sun dipped lower toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, the three of them headed back toward the cottage. Marcus chatted about his plans for tomorrow's castle, bigger, better, with more smart defenses against the tide. Can Elena come see it? He asked as they climbed the stairs to the deck. She knows about building things. David and Elena exchanged another look, this one full of questions. Neither of them was quite ready to answer. Elena might have to get back to her own life. David said carefully, I could stay until tomorrow morning. Elena offered, if that's okay with you. Marcus cheered with joy and ran inside to wash the sand off his hands as soon as the screen door closed behind him. Elena turned to David, I should have asked you first. It's fine, there's a guest room, but Elena, we need to talk about what happens next, about Sarah, about the legal situation, about how much we tell Marcus. And when I know I've been thinking about nothing else for 2 months. They sat on the deck furniture as the evening light kept fading from inside the cottage. They could hear Marcus humming as he lipped around in the kitchen, probably searching for the things to make his famous peanut butter and marshmallow sandwiches. What do you want? David asked. I mean, in a perfect world, what would you want our situation to look like? Elena was quiet for a long moment. I want to know him. I want him to know me when he's ready. I want to be part of his life in whatever way makes sense for all of us. And us. What about us? The question surprised them both. David hadn't meant to ask it, but now that it was in the air, he realized it had been hiding in his mind since the moment Shed stepped out of her car. I don't know. Elena said honestly, 12 years is a long time. We're different people now. Are we? She looked at him in the growing dark, and David saw something flash in her eyes, knowing chance, a spark of the link they'd once shared. I don't know, she repeated, but her voice was softer now from inside the cottage. Marcus called out, Deb, can you help me reach the marshmallows? The moment broke, and David stood to go help his son at the door. He stopped and looked back at Elena. For what it's worth, I don't think we're as different as we might want to believe. The next morning dawned, clear and bright, with the kind of clear light that made the ocean look like scattered jewels. David woke to the sound of voices on the beach and looked out his bedroom window to see Elena and Marcus already hard at work on the new castle. She had stayed in the guest room, and they had talked until nearly midnight about practical things. Lawyers' custody plans, how to handle Sarah's coming talk about Denver. But under all the plans, David had sensed something else, a careful hope that maybe, just maybe, they could build something new from the ruins of their past. He made coffee and walked down to join them, amazed at how natural Elena looked, helping Marcus plan his latest building. Wonder we made it bigger, Marcus announced as David came near. Elena showed me how to pack the sand tighter. so it won't fall down so fast. Elena's smart about building things, David agreed, she said. She might teach me. About garden castles. 2 castles made of plants instead of sand. David raised an eyebrow at Elena, who shrugged with a small smile. I may have mentioned that I have a backyard that could use a creative garden designer's touch. Are you offering my summer job? I'm offering our son a chance to learn something new. If his father thinks it's a good idea, our son. The words felt natural coming from Elena's lips, as if she'd been practicing them. Maybe she had. I think David said carefully that Marcus would love to learn about garden building, and I think his father would love to see what you two could create together. Marcus whooped and ran toward the water, chasing a bold seagull that had been eyeing his building project as they watched him play. David found himself standing closer to Elena than really needed. So what happens now? She asked. Now we figure it out as we go. We talk to lawyers. We have some hard talks with Sarah. And we find a way to tell Marcus the truth when the time is right. And as David looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not the ghost of his past, but a woman who had shared the most important part of his life without him even knowing it. I'd like to find out, he said, if you're interested. Elena's smile was like the sunrise over the ocean, slow, then bright, then warming everything it touched. I'm interested. As if called by their talk, Marcus came running back up the beach, his hair wild from the wind, and his face bright with excitement. I think this is going to be the best castle ever, he declared, throwing his sandy arms around both of them in a sudden hug. David caught Elena's eye over Marcus's head, and in that moment he realized that maybe the truth hadn't destroyed his family after all. Maybe it had finally given them the chance to become the family they were always meant to be. The tide would come in again that evening, just as it always did, washing away the castle they built together. But David was no longer afraid of the tide. He was learning finally that the most important things couldn't be washed away. They could only grow stronger with time, patience, and the bravery to rebuild on firmer ground. As the 3 of them stood on the beach watching the waves dance in the morning light, David felt something he hadn't felt in years, the quiet sureness that he was exactly where he belonged, with exactly the people he was meant to love. Some truths he thought are worth waiting for, and some castles are meant to be built not just once, but over and over again, each time stronger than the last.